At 0458 hours, the desert did what deserts do best: conceal the truth. The horizon was little more than a thin, trembling line where darkness met darker darkness. There was no wind, no movement, no sound beyond the slow cooling of stones and the faint hiss of sand shifting under its own weight. For most observers, this would have seemed like another night in a region defined by nights exactly like this. But to those watching from satellites 35,000 kilometers above, the picture was very different. Something was moving, something deliberate, something calculated. On a strip of asphalt, hidden deep inside a restricted airbase, floodlights blinked to life in synchronized pairs. Their beams carved long silver blades across the runway, illuminating the stealth gray frame of an aircraft never publicly acknowledged, never officially deployed, and, until that moment, never caught in motion by any foreign sensor. A triangular shadow stretched across the concrete, smooth, seamless, silent. This was no routine sortie. It was the beginning of an operation designed in absolute secrecy, rehearsed across deserts and oceans, and executed with a precision the modern battlefield rarely witnesses. Within 50 minutes, it would become the single most studied military engagement of the year, a brief, violent demonstration of strategy, stealth, and timing. And it began with a spark. From the outside, the mission appeared to be a strike, but inside classified briefings, analysts referred to it as a controlled demonstration of access and dominance. The target was not simply a site. It was a message intended for radar operators, air defense commanders, and intelligence ministries spanning 4 different countries. The objective: infiltrate a multi-layered air defense zone believed to be nearly impenetrable. Penetrate it cleanly. Strike a specific deep underground node. Exit without interception. And do it under conditions chosen not by convenience, but by design: heavy fog, high humidity, and thermal turbulence, conditions traditionally hostile to stealth geometry. Military theorists later described the mission as a stress test conducted in real combat. The aircraft selected carried no conventional markings, no tail number, no national insignia. Its presence was not authorized to exist in any open registry. Even its takeoff time was logged only on encrypted channels that would self-delete after 30 minutes. This operation required the dissolution of all traces. The aircraft rolled forward, its landing gear compressing slightly under the weight. From above, it resembled the shadow of a wing rather than a machine. Infrared satellites failed to pick it up, owing to the active cooling system that regulated the skin temperature to match the surrounding air. Ground observers would later describe it as a shape that refused to be seen. As the engine spooled, a low-frequency vibration rippled across the runway. Not loud enough to draw attention, but deep enough to be felt by those standing nearby. The aircraft accelerated, faster still, and at 0504 hours, its wheels lifted from the asphalt, vanishing into the void where radar screens would remain empty for the next 40 minutes. What followed was a flight path drawn like a surgeon's incision, precise, deliberate, and nearly invisible. To understand what happened next, one must understand the architecture of the defense it moved toward. The region's radar network was one of the densest on the continent. Dozens of fixed-array early warning radars overlapped their sweeps, designed to detect cruise missiles skimming the terrain and aircraft attempting to climb above them. Mobile batteries filled the gaps. Short-range systems guarded critical infrastructure. A web of sensors, passive, active, infrared, and acoustic, covered the terrain like an electronic net. Military analysts often described it as a forest of detection. Not particularly modern in every area, not flawlessly integrated, but saturated enough to catch almost anything that crossed it. Almost anything. At 05:17 hours, the aircraft entered the outer perimeter of the radar envelope, yet no alarm sounded. No operator leaned over a console to request verification. The screens remained quiet. Tracking lines continued in predictable patterns. The air defense computer performed its routine calculations, unaware that an entirely new variable had just entered its domain. The aircraft didn't avoid the radars. It flew directly through them. Its surfaces, edges, and materials were engineered not to deflect radar waves, but to absorb, scatter, and distort them in ways that denied coherence. Instead of returning a consistent signal, it returned fragmented echoes, so faint, so irregular, that the radars classified them as atmospheric clutter. On multiple screens, faint dots appeared and vanished like digital dust. Algorithms dismissed them. Operators ignored them. After all, the desert produced noise like this every night. But for a single brief moment, at 05:22 hours, one operator leaned forward. A flicker in Sector 4. A return so faint it barely registered. He tapped the glass. The dot vanished. He filed it under system noise and continued his shift. That was the moment the aircraft crossed the first defensive threshold. Unseen, unchallenged, and entirely within operational parameters. At 05:29 hours, the aircraft descended. Not because it needed to, but because it was part of the plan. Flying low would bring it beneath radar curvature. But that was not the reason. The aircraft descended because the strike would require a trajectory impossible from high altitude. The payload it carried was not a traditional penetrator. It was a specialized hybrid designed for hard structure neutralization without large area destruction. A weapon built not to destroy cities, but to carve precise damage into deep underground structures, bunkers, communication nodes, hardened data vaults. To deliver such a weapon with exact impact geometry, the aircraft would need to fly at a carefully selected altitude, one that allowed aerodynamic stability, predictable drift, and a clean escape vector. Too high and the bomb would veer. Too low, and the shockwave could threaten the aircraft during extraction. In military terminology, this altitude is called the window, a narrow band where all variables align: air pressure, speed, angle, and impact physics. The pilot's controls never wavered. Every adjustment was subtle, almost imperceptible. But on the flight logs, later reviewed by analysts, the path resembled a hand-drawn line, ruled by mathematical certainty. Even the stars above shifted as the aircraft angled toward the strike zone. At 05:36 hours, the air defenses stirred, but not because they detected the aircraft, but because they detected something else. A shift in atmospheric patterns, a thermal distortion, a fluctuation in background radiation. Small anomalies, none definitive, but enough to suggest that something was moving through the airspace. The defense network, though unaware of the aircraft's shape, became aware of its consequences. Algorithms adjusted sensitivity. Sweeps narrowed, filters recalibrated. The radar net grew sharper. By 05:40 hours, operators noticed an unusual cluster of readings. Still too faint to identify, but concentrated, persistent. Orders were issued to bring 2 mobile radar stations to high output mode. Their dishes turned toward the void. Their beams intensified. Their sweep speeds doubled. Yet the aircraft remained a ghost. Its signature did not vanish. It simply never formed. But the defenders were no longer calm. They were searching for something, anything, that could explain the shift. in the electronic noise. Inside operations centers, screens brightened, voices rose, senior officers arrived. The atmosphere thickened with the weight of uncertain expectation. They didn't know what was coming, but they knew something was coming. At 05:47 hours, the aircraft reached its attack vector. The landscape below was little more than an undulating shadow, but the terrain map displayed beneath the cockpit showed every ridge and depression with razor clarity. The target lay ahead, a hardened underground node buried under nearly 30 meters of reinforced materials, a facility designed not to be destroyed from above. Yet the mission was not to destroy it entirely. The objective was to remove a very specific section, a communications relay junction that connected the underground node to distant command structures. Destroying this relay would isolate the facility, severing its ability to transmit or receive strategic information. The weapon bay opened. No sound escaped into the night. No heat signature spiked. The doors were designed to absorb vibrations and mask emissions. From the ground, even standing directly beneath the aircraft, one would hear nothing. At 05 or 49:21 hours, the weapon released. It fell silently. No glowing tail, no roar. Just a dark shape descending through a darker sky. 3 seconds later, small control fins activated, guiding it along a precise descent path. What followed was a physics problem, one solved through years of testing. The weapon adjusted its course in tiny increments, millimeters of correction, microseconds of calculation. It was a dance between gravity, inertia, geometry, and ground turbulence. At 05:49:57 hours, it struck. The ground trembled. Sand lifted in a circular wave. A deep, muffled thud resonated through the earth like the heartbeat of a giant. The facility's surface remained largely intact. No wide crater, only a small plume of dust rising from a nearly invisible vent. But deep inside the earth, the shockwave split the relay junction cleanly. Servers collapsed, cables ruptured, power nodes flickered out. The facility plunged into isolation. The defenders did not know what hit them. They only knew that at 05:50 hours, something inside their network went dark. And at that exact moment, their radars flared. At 05:50:23 hours, a radar operator saw it, not the aircraft, but the turbulence left behind, an afterglow of disruption so faint, it resembled a ghost of an echo. It lasted less than half a second, but it was enough. Operators began isolating sectors, zooming in, enhancing, attempting to locate the source of the anomaly. For the first time, they realized they were not dealing with atmospheric noise. Something had entered their airspace. Something had attacked. They scrambled interceptors. 2 aircraft launched within minutes, racing into the night on full afterburner. But they were too late. The intruder was already gone. At 05:52 hours, the aircraft climbed, slowly, smoothly, without urgency. Its escape path was not evasive. It did not zigzag. It did not alter speed. It simply continued its trajectory at a steady angle, maintaining the same radar-dampening geometry. The defenders' radars scanned furiously. Dozens of screens flickered. Operators attempted to chase the faintest traces of motion. But the aircraft had already returned to its cloak of near invisibility, absorbing signals, dispersing heat, blending into the sky. Interceptors swept the skies but found nothing. Their radars saw only empty air. At 05:59 hours, the aircraft crossed the outer boundary of the defense network. At 06:04 hours, it exited all active tracking zones entirely. By 06:22 hours, it was over international airspace, moving through clouds that swallowed its outline whole. And by 06:41 hours, it landed. No fanfare, no celebration, No announcement, only the soft hiss of tires on runway and the quiet click of cooling engines. The aircraft returned to its shelter. The lights dimmed. The doors closed behind it. In 30 minutes, its takeoff logs would be erased. In 40 minutes, satellite footage of the area would be overwritten. By sunrise, nothing would remain except a small scar in the desert where a buried relay once stood. At 09 to 13 hours, the underground facility attempted to reactivate its communication systems. They failed. At 09 to 47 hours, technicians discovered structural damage, but could not determine how the strike was delivered. By noon, intelligence analysts across the region began referencing the event as the silent cut. News outlets speculated. Governments denied. But military analysts knew exactly what had happened. A demonstration, a reminder, a message sent not with words, but with precision, stealth, and silence. From orbit, the desert looked unchanged, still, quiet, unaware. But beneath the calm was a scar, not of destruction, but of revelation. A reminder that the future of warfare would not be defined by shock and awe, but by the ability to move unseen, strike with precision, and vanish before an enemy even understood what had occurred. This mission lasted only 97 minutes, but its implications would last far longer, because on that night, the desert trembled not from the force of the strike, but from the realization of what had delivered it.